Hi there, and welcome back to the NWR Communications Investor Virtual Conference this year, of course. It's the 8th in the series, and we return to you with another great company, SUDA Pharmaceuticals. It's a biotech company that's focused on developing therapies to treat human disease. The two focus areas for SUDA are oncology and conditions that impact the central nervous system. So it's developing its invariant natural killer CAR-INKT cell therapy platform from Imperial College London to treat blood cancers in particular, as well as low-risk oral sprays to reformulate existing pharmaceuticals. We will be answering questions at the end of this presentation. We do hope you can put your questions into the system just via the box at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to them at the end. Presenting today for SUDA Pharmaceuticals is Dr. Michael Baker. He is CEO and MD. Michael.
Thanks very much, Nadine. Thanks for having me, and thanks to NWR for putting on the event. And thanks to everybody else for dialing in and taking the time. We really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to taking you through some of what Nadine's just mentioned in terms of the new technologies that we've licensed in, but certainly where we're moving in the short to medium term as well. And I'll just skip straight through the disclaimer. And for those of you that don't know SUDA, as Nadine pointed out, we are a biotechnology company, and we are very much focused on two areas. The first being oncology or cancer, and also conditions that affect the central nervous system. And as a company, our vision really is aspiring to be a world-leading biotechnology company, helping people to live longer and healthier lives. And certainly to do that, our mission is to develop our existing products, but also to continue to look to acquire additional platforms that we think can have a significant impact on those two treatment areas. And as a company, we have a set of values that are quite important to us. We are patient-centric, data-driven to make our decisions, and we certainly strive for excellence while being innovative. We're milestone-focused and never give up, and certainly we are accountable and we act with honesty and integrity. And just to take you through some of the recent highlights of the company, firstly on the oncology side of things, we did recently enter into an exclusive license agreement with a novel invariant natural killer T-cell therapy platform, CAR-INKT for short. And that technology comes out of Imperial College London, and I'll be talking quite a bit about that throughout the presentation, given what we believe is the significance for the company and the fact that it only occurred quite recently. And we're developing that platform for the treatment of blood cancers. We're also working on a drug called anegrelide. So it's a well-known drug. And actually SUDA is the only company that holds the patents for that particular drug for the treatment of metastatic disease, so solid tumors. And what we're doing is working to convert that into an oral spray, which we believe will be a safer product than the existing tablet form of the drug. And on the central nervous system front, we are working on our lead product, Zolpimus, which is a drug for the treatment of short-term insomnia. We received TGA approval for that drug in July of last year, and we're working hard to commercialize that product in our local territory, but also in other territories around the globe, looking to enter into licensing agreements, and also using that TGA approval to assist with the partners that we already have for their reg submissions and commercialization efforts. And so we also have our unique platform, the Oramis platform, which enables us to reformulate drugs from solid dose forms into oral sprays, which we know comes with a whole host of benefits. And because we're working with previously approved drugs, we know that it's likely that we'll be able to have a faster path to market and have cost and time savings, which is important. And to give you an overview of the company, as of yesterday, we had a valuation of around 24 million. At the end of the last quarter, we had $6.7 million cash in the bank. As Nadine pointed out, we are a biotechnology company. So in terms of our investors, we do have some very supportive investors on our register, which certainly understand and appreciate the horizons of a biotechnology investment. And I think that's really important, but we're certainly always looking to have people join the register, but being very clear that an investment in biotechnology is something we're looking to create a lot of value over a medium to long-term horizon. And really for 2021, our focus is three major aspects. The first is to acquire and integrate new technologies. So that revolves around the CAR-INKT cell therapy platform. And as I mentioned, we did acquire the license to that only recently, and it sits nicely in between our existing pipeline of products, in the preclinical stages, which is, as I said, it comes out of Imperial College London. So for anagrelide, that's the drug we're developing for solid tumours where patients have high platelet levels, that we're still working to reformulate with an expert formulation group in the UK called MedPharm. And hopefully we're stabilising that formulation so we can take it into formal preclinical studies. And for Zolpidem, our most advanced product, we already have partnerships with Teva and Mitsubishi Tanabe Pharma Korea. And we're working with them again to continue to support them on their regulatory and commercialization efforts, in addition to leveraging the approval that we received last year by the TGA to secure an Australian partner, but also to secure additional partners across the globe. So just to go back to the iNKT cell therapy, as I mentioned, we acquired the license for that product in June of this year, so only quite recently. And what it is, it's been described as a supercharged invariant natural killer T cell platform. And I'll just break it up there for a little bit because it's important to note that a cell therapy is it falls under the umbrella of an immunotherapy, and they have really almost changed the way we think about the treatment of cancer, so much so to the point we're actually talking about cure, which is a nice word to be using in such a negative context. And the iNKT cell therapy platform really places SUDA at the forefront of immuno-oncology drug development and really assists us to expand our development pipeline and potential. And so the idea for that platform is that we combine it with what's called chimeric antigen receptor technology. And with that, we can actually have two ways to kill cancer cells, which is quite important, makes it a very potent treatment. And for that particular therapy, we'll be focusing on the treatment of blood cancers. And really importantly, one of the aspects about that technology is that we can use it what's called off the shelf. And this is unique across the industry. And what that means is we can actually treat patients from a single source, which is quite unique. And again, we see that as a very big benefit. And from the data that's come out of Imperial College, we see that the CAR-INKT cells work more efficiently than conventional cell therapies, and so much so that they outperform the CAR T cells by rapidly clearing the cancer, but also increasing animal survival over a longer period of time, which is really important because that really is the goal, is to get some long-term and sustainable remissions. And really importantly, the cell therapy, the iNKT cells have actually been shown to undergo a secondary or cause a secondary remission without any additional treatment, which is quite remarkable and something that is certainly striking and seems unique to that technology. And the inventor of the technology is Professor Anastasios Karademetris. So as I mentioned, he comes from Imperial College London in the UK. And just to put it in context, the Imperial College is consistently ranked as one of the top 10 universities in the world. So it really puts it up there with Harvard, MIT, and universities of that nature. So it is an impressive institution. And in 2019, it was voted by Reuters as one of the most innovative universities. And I think that's largely due to the fact that central to its mission is really the application of the research that is undertaken at the institution and applying that into translational aspects, and certainly in our case, really importantly, across healthcare. And in addition, they've also got clinical trial facilities, which is quite advantageous when you consider you're looking to take these therapies really into that clinical setting. And certainly there is a clear focus on working with what we call advanced therapeutic medicinal products, of which cell therapy is one of those. And so again, there's a big push to create teams and critical mass in order to catalyze the translation of these promising types of treatments. And so for the professor himself, he's got a remarkable pedigree, and essentially he spent after doing his medical training, so he's a hematologist, so he's a medical doctor, and then spent his entire research career really understanding immune cells and the impact that they have on cancer. And he performed his research training at Memorial Sloan Kettering, and for those of you that don't know, that's one of the best and leading centers for cancer treatment in the US, and some early work really pioneered these chimeric antigen receptor immunotherapies. And after that, he went to Hammersmith Hospital in London, the Weatherall Institute at Oxford, and now he sits as a director for two prestigious blood cancer centres. So again, a very impressive individual, but also a real pleasure to be working alongside. And just to take you through what the platform is, again, using some cartoons here. So as I said, it is a mouthful. It's the chimeric antigen receptor invariant natural killer T cell therapy, and we shorten that to CAR-INKT. And what's really important is that iNKT cells themselves, they form part of our immune system. So they're a very low abundant cell type, but they're essentially one of the types of soldiers in our body that patrol our circulatory system and our body, looking for foreign things to essentially take out of the equation, whether that be bacteria or virus, or in this case, it's cancer cells. And what's really important is that little pink, what we call an ITCR, or invariant T cell receptor sticking up. It doesn't change between humans. And so this is a really important point, because what that means is if I give my cells to somebody or vice versa, they don't cause what's called graft versus host disease, which is when the cells start attacking the other person's body. And for that reason, that's why we think we can use this technology off the shelf. And I'll talk more about the importance of that in a moment, but it's a really key area that a lot of people are trying to get involved in relation to cell therapies. And so what we're going to do, and what the preclinical research has already done, is introduce the CAR, which is this molecule standing up in green here. And what we do is we have something on the end of that depicted in light green that's specific to attacking a cancer cell. And so that's what I mean over here. We've got this ITCR, which also can find and attack cancer cells. We have two ways for these CAR-INKT cells to find, attach to, and destroy cancer cells. So as I said, we have secured the exclusive global license to that platform, and we have done so we can actually use it for the treatment of human disease, which is great. And to give you a bit more color on how it actually works. So this is, again, a cartoon picture of, starting over on the very left, we've got an iNKT cell. It has its invariant natural T cell receptor, which is always there. That on its own can recognize and kill cancer cells, or assist in triggering the destruction of cancer cells. We then engineer the iNKT cells to have a CAR that sits out on the surface of the iNKT cell. And then when we've got that product ready, and we administer that to a cancer patient, those iNKT cells will patrol around until they find a cancer cell that's got those two markers on their surface. And once the invariant T cell receptor and the CAR find those particular, what we call proteins on the surface of the cell, they release components that essentially trigger the destruction of that cancer cell. Now, it's not depicted on this slide, but the iNKT cells also trigger an influx or an immune response to bring other cells to assist in the destruction of the cancer cells. And so what's really important when we were screening the technologies to license into SUDA was looking at the data that's been produced. And so we looked through dozens of technologies, and it was really the data that we saw from the lab of Professor Carrie Dimitri that stood out. And so what we're actually looking at here, this is typically in this field, people use mouse models as a way to assess if the technology is doing what we want it to do. And what we've got here is a series of different treatments of the mice. And what you see at the top is day 0. They've been treated with something that causes a blood cancer. And then after 3 days after treatment with the particular treatments that I'll run through in a moment. And what you see when you've got the blue, red, or green is essentially cancer cells. And so when they were treated with PBS, which is nothing, just normal immune T cells, normal iNKT cells, or CAR-19 T cells, or CAR-INKT cells, they're the different treatments. And so what we see for the first 4 is there's always remaining cancer cells after 3 days. But remarkably for the iNKT cells, all the tumor cells were eradicated. So already demonstrating that they have very swift activity at removing the cancer cells from the animals. So importantly, as I said, longevity is a really important point here. We don't want to just remove the cancer cells quickly and have them return. We want the animals to live for a long time. And of course, hope that translates into the clinical setting in humans. And so what we have here is it's a longer study where we track the mice over time after a single treatment. And so on the left, we have the number of animals that are surviving. So it's set to 100% up the top. So if no animals die, the line stays up the top, all the way down to 0%. So if all the animals die, the line goes back down to 0. And so what you can see with the red line is that's the CAR-19 iNKT cells, and really about greater than 90% of the animals are still alive. And that contrasts to 3 of the other treatments where they're all by just over 60 days, they've all succumbed to the cancer. And as I said earlier, the conventional CAR-19 T cell therapies, they have prolonged survival, but only to the point where about 60% of the animals are surviving. So we've got approximately 1.5 times more animals surviving with our treatment that we've licensed in. And as I mentioned earlier, what we saw in one of the experiments was that 4 of the mice that had been treated with our therapy, the iNKT cells, they actually developed cancer a second time. So after they were cured, the cancer had gone away, and then the cancer returned at about 20 to 30 days. So we've got 4 different panels depicting 4 different mice. And again, anywhere you see the color red, blue, or green, that's cancer. And so, as I said, you can see in around the 20 to 30 day mark, it started to return. And then by 50 days, in essentially all 4 of those animals, the cancer had gone away a second time. And that's with no additional treatment. It's spontaneous, which means that the cells are around, they're staying in the body of the mice, and they're able to remove the cancer a second time, which is quite remarkable. Now, as I said, we're very comfortable now that we've got a product that we think has got excellent activity. But as I mentioned, one of the really important factors or parameters to consider for the sector is the logistics. It's a very complicated therapy as it stands today. So over in the orange shaded panel, this is the current workflow for how patients are actually receiving this type of therapy. And basically every single patient will be diagnosed with cancer. They'll have undergone some form of treatment before they get access to a CAR-T. But essentially we have to take each patient's cells, we have to modify them genetically, we have to then quality control test them, and then give them back to the patient. And so all of that is incredibly time consuming and costly. And as I said, it takes about 3 to 4 weeks. So a patient may actually fall out of eligibility while that process is being undertaken, and they may not actually be able to even take that therapy once it's ready. So this contrasts to what we're intending for the iNKT cells, which is you start from a healthy donor, you produce what's called a master cell bank and a working cell bank, and then you've got many lots or patient doses ready frozen to be administered to a patient as and when needed. And so we do see that we think that will improve the logistics and hopefully reduce the cost of the therapy. But because the healthy donor will not have seen a cancer, they won't have seen likely chemotherapy or radiotherapy, we also think the starting material will be better. So we should have hopefully a more efficacious product. Now, the platform itself has robust intellectual property. So we've got patents that have been filed in the US, Canada, China, Europe, and Australia. And the patent has long life, and we're expecting that not to expire until 2038. And just to give a bit of context on the cell therapy market itself. So it's still a very hot area. And even up until a couple of weeks ago, we're seeing still some pretty significant transactions, IPOs and so forth in this space. So I've just pulled out a few here from the last 12 months or just over. We saw that Caribou Biosciences, which are working with T and natural killer cells, IPO'd a couple of weeks ago and raised $304 million US. Shoreline Biosciences is a company focusing on natural killer cells, and they're different from invariant natural killer T cells. They announced a strategic partnership with Kite with a deal value of about $2.3 billion over the life of the deal. Charisma Therapeutics is a company focusing on macrophages, another type of immune cell. And they just completed their Series B for raising $59 million. Kiadis Pharma is a company focused on natural killer cells and were acquired by Sanofi for $358 million. And Inventor Therapeutics, which is one of the more well-known cell therapy companies, again, focusing on natural killer cells, IPO'd last year, raising $252 million. So there's quite a bit of activity still in the space. And specifically for the iNKT cells, there's a lot less activity and a lot fewer people are working on this particular cell type. So we do see that we've got an advantage by working on this at an earlier point in time. But certainly there's still some activity with Cure Therapeutics, who had two very early stage phase 1 clinical trials. They were acquired upfront in cash and equity for 70 million by Athenex in May of this year, and $115 million in milestone payments. And Apia Bio, another company who are preclinical and still some way from the clinic, raised 52 million in their Series A in May as well. So certainly there is less activity, but we don't expect it to stay like that for too long. But overall, the CAR T cell therapy market and the cell therapy markets in general are really growing at a very rapid rate, and certainly expected to reach very, very large. And I've got here just under 14 billion by 2026. And again, just to provide a bit of context on what early stage cell therapy valuations look like. So I mentioned Nkarta before, who IPO'd just in the middle of last year. They have a number of products still. I think their lead product is still phase 1 and a valuation of north of $1.4 billion. Agenus, another company that they also have other products other than cell therapy products, but just one cell therapy product in phase 1, and they're over 1.5 billion. Precision Biosciences, who are using genetic engineering to focus on their T cell platforms. They've got quite a number of cell therapy products and valued at just under 800 million. And Athenex, who I mentioned before, that acquired Cure Therapeutics, valued at just under 500 million. And two ASX listed companies, Chimeric Therapeutics, which has now one product in phase 1 and a preclinical stage asset as well, valued at 110, and Prescient Therapeutics, which has three preclinical pathways that it's following, and they're valued at about 115 million. And so really for SUDA and the CAR-INKT cell therapy platform, what we're looking to do over the 12 to 24 month period is really get the technology and progress it into clinical trials as quickly as possible. So the first thing we've done, and we announced that yesterday, is we're recruiting a cell therapy manufacturing expert. This will be followed quickly by selecting GMP manufacturers to assist with the components that go into these types of therapies, and then produce the material that we would need for phase 1 clinical trial, and also interact with the necessary regulatory bodies to get those trials up and running, and certainly then looking to dose patients in a phase 1 clinical trial for, at this stage, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a type of blood cancer. And while that's going on, we'll be also looking to develop additional products that utilize other CARs, not just the CAR-19. And so I would like to just touch on Dr. Sandhya Buchanan, who, as I said, we had her officially join yesterday, which is great. We're very excited. She's a VP of Manufacturing and Quality. She's got a very, very distinguished career with a PhD in Pharmaceutical Sciences from the University of Colorado, more than 20 years of experience in cell and gene therapy and manufacturing, vaccine manufacturing, and having worked for companies like Novartis, Fujifilm, Penn Medicine, and most recently she was at Atara Bio, but certainly has a wealth of information, and she will lead the manufacturing efforts for our INKT cell therapy platform. And I would just like to stop there and summarize the platform. But so, as I said, we have secured the exclusive rights to the INKT cell therapy platform. Comes out of Imperial College London, and we're delighted to be working with Professor Kara Dimitri. As I mentioned, it's really important that we've got the two products, or the two ways of targeting, I should say, the cancer cells, which is, again, you can see before that makes these technologies a really potent treatment for cancer. We are targeting CD19 in blood cancers initially, but we're excited by the potential to produce an off-the-shelf product because we think it will be more efficacious, but also really improve the logistics and hopefully the cost and affordability, so we can get therapy to many more patients. And we do think for those reasons that we'll have a lot of interest from large pharma. And so just to quickly talk through our portfolio. So as I've mentioned, we've talked through the INKT cell therapy platform, but we are looking to continue to stabilize anegrelide for the treatment of solid tumors in patients that have high platelet levels. And that work is ongoing with MedPharm, who've been involved with 55 approved products. For Zolpimus, as I said, we are looking to continue to work with our partners closely for their reg and commercialization efforts, as well as leverage our TGA approval for securing an Australian partner and other partners in regions around the globe. And we're also continuing to work with Strides for our product that we're developing for the treatment of migraines, sumatriptan, and also our medical grade cannabis product. We're continuing to reformulate with Can Pharmaceutical. And Sanofi, we've also got a partnership, but we can't, unfortunately, we can't disclose the name of that product. And just to finalize, so we do have a very senior, a very experienced team, which is great. Certainly, I don't think our chairman, Paul Hopper, needs much of an introduction to this space. He's certainly done amazing things for the sector. And so very delighted to have him as our chairman, helping on early stage development all the way through to commercialization. And myself, some of you may know me, but I have a PhD in biochemistry and was involved in drug development before venture investing, and joined SUDA as the CEO at the beginning of last year. David Phillips has got a very extensive background in life sciences across biotech, pharma, venture investing through his time as managing partner at SR1, which is formerly GSK's corporate venture fund, and David Simmons, who brings a very important element of corporate governance and compliance from his time at EY as a senior audit partner. And with that, I'd like to stop and say thank you again very much for your attention. I appreciate you taking the time to hear more about SUDA.
Well, thank you for that, Michael. Really great presentation. And it's been a busy couple of weeks for SUDA Pharmaceuticals. Could you flesh out a little bit more, your dealings with Teva and what could come from that?
Yeah, so Teva, we entered into that agreement quite some time ago, and where we are at the moment is we're still working with them closely to support on the regulatory submissions and commercialization efforts. It's an important relationship that we have because it's our most advanced product, and we're certainly excited to get that product commercialized. In this case, it would be South America through Chile, Brazil, and Mexico. And unfortunately, just as the way of the commercial world, they don't permit us to disclose details of where things are at due to the commercial sensitivities, but certainly working closely with them. Okay,
and how about any other programs that SUDA Pharmaceuticals is involved in? Can Pharmaceuticals is one that's been brought up by a participant.
Yeah, so again, there's not much we can say other than we're still working with those companies in the reformulation stages. And when we've got updates to put out about those programs, we'll put them out.
Okay. Now, somebody's asked, I was wondering what the oral spray medication applicator bottle puffer looks like and what provisions have been put in place to determine how many dosages are left after a person starts that oral spray medication.
Sure, good question. And the simple answer is our device or our applicator doesn't have a single look or feel. We can be quite flexible with the type of unit that we use, which is helpful. And so they range from glass bottles to plastic bottles to units with straws, units without. In terms of dosing, they're not metered in any way. So you're not going to say, I've had 23 doses, I've got 5 left. That's not how it works. But what there will be in most products, and I'll use Zolpidem as an example, is some overage to account for when you're going to use a product like this for the first time, or when there's been a delay between usage, you will need to prime the unit, and that results in a little bit of wastage of the product. But the idea is that you have enough overage so that you're still getting the full supply, but there's no metering or anything of that nature. Okay, Michael, finally, can we get an indication of how long it will take to get a pre-IND meeting with the FDA? Yeah, look, there's a few meetings to be had, and we're going through that process of figuring out which are the most important meetings, to the point where we could be talking about a pre-IND meeting. At this stage, it's still probably a bit early to determine exactly when that will be, but we're still aiming for within that 12 to 24 month period that we are filing an IND, which would be quite exciting for the company. Okay, Michael, Dr. Michael Baker from SUDA Pharmaceuticals, thank you so much for your presentation today, and we hope to hear some more news on all of those fronts soon. Thanks, Nadine. Thank you very much for having me.